clear to kill. He's abandoned bandit. Making fire.
Fox in airport window for firing a missile.
I was meant to be new.
The Arrow 1, Canada's first supersonic fighter plane, is ready to fly after 5 years of work and planning by 5,000 people at Avro of Canada, near Toronto.
I was meant to be beautiful. The world would have looked to the sky and seen hope, seen mercy. Instead, to look up in horror.
The conservative government of John Diefenbaker canceled the Arrow program after 5
Because of
years.
you. You wounded me. I give you full marks for that. But, like the man said, what doesn't kill me just makes me stronger.
Now, I did say in older videos that I was planning on viewing an Avro Arrow video. And the time has now arrived of me doing an Avro Arrow video, because it just so happens to be one of my favorite aircraft of all time. I mean, you definitely wouldn't have ever noticed or knew about that. I'm very secretive about this. The Avro Arrow was an all-weather interceptor developed in Canada. It had a ceiling about 70,000 feet and was going to travel well above Mach 2. It was developed during the Cold War era to help defend Canada's airspaces from Russian nuclear bombers and to help protect the United States in the case if a nuclear bomber was going over top of Canada's airspace. Because during the time, intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, weren't even developed during the time. That was until Sputnik arrived, and that just so happened to launch on the same day of the Arrow's unveiling, which in all honesty was the nail in the coffin to the Arrow program. Not to mention that they spent $1 billion in Canadian money at that time in the 1950s for this Arrow project. So not only was it very expensive, but also the role in which the Arrow was going to fill during that time just was no longer there, at least in terms in the Canadian government's eyes. Now there's a lot of like conspiracy theories on whether the United States tried to kill it because it was so advanced, and there's some kind of credence to that conspiracy theory, but I mean beyond the fact that the Canadian government was just trying to destroy the whole aircraft, and even though that Britain and France kind of wanted to look at this aircraft more, they just flat out tried to kill this aircraft entirely, destroy all the documents, destroy every semblance of this aircraft ever existing. Beyond that, there's really no more evidence beyond the fact that the United States tried to kill this thing. And as you can see right here, the Delta Dart looked almost identical to that of the Avro Arrow, just in a smaller package. The Avro Arrow would have carried 4 Sparrow 2 missiles in its internal weapons bay. Yes, it had an internal weapons bay for 1950s, which is very uncommon for interceptors or fighters during that time, and wouldn't have been seen until long later, until the F-22. It did have data link in where it could talk to other arrows to increase its radar range, as well as getting target acquisition and IFF data from other arrows in the area. It was also one of the very first aircraft to have fly-by-wire as a production model. The Germans technically were messing around with fly-by-wire during World War II, but they were only using that as prototypes in terms of testing the idea, but the Arrow would have been the very first one to have it as a production model. It truly was ahead of its time in terms of a lot of aspects, though one of the biggest problems with the Arrow was not only with how expensive it was, but just also with how massive the airframe was. Having a gross weight of 57,000 pounds, a maximum takeoff weight of 68,600 pounds, a wingspan of 50 feet, and a length of 77 feet. And because of this size, it needed a longer runway for takeoffs and landings to be safe, which kind of limited its capabilities in terms of where it could land and where it could operate. But for the 1950s, it did have a 300 nautical miles range with a combat range of 200 nautical miles. During its time, it did hold a couple of records, that being the fastest top speed record and the fastest climb rate record being that of 2,453 kilometers per hour, or just a little bit above Mach 2, as well as a climb rate of 1,524 meters in 4 minutes and 24 seconds. It truly was an absolute beast during the time. Now, when ICBMs became the forefront of people's ideas and whether the Arrow even had a place, because we wouldn't have to worry about bombers anymore, we would have to worry about missiles, it started to fit the Arrow with the possibility of running some multi-role capabilities. being able to carry 4 1,000-pound bombs, another kind of bomb munitions that the United States would be able to give us. So it would have the capability of probably running something like 8 500-pound bombs within the weapons bay, as well as some basic dumb bomb cluster munitions as well. They're also planning on throwing 2 30mm aiding cannons from the Hawker Hunter. Now, what the engineers were planning on doing with 30mm aiding cannons in the weapons bay, I honestly have no idea, and what they were planning on using that for. I would imagine maybe close air support, but other than that, I honestly have no fucking idea. But they were planning on throwing 30mm aiding cannons in the weapons bay. And that's a lot of munitions during the time, so how are they planning on being able to interchange these weapons quickly to get this thing up in the air, especially as an interceptor, because you want these interceptors to be up in the air and quickly running as fast as possible? Well, the weapons bay was actually like a cartridge system, so it would basically be like a big box, and they would be able to load their munitions into these boxes. But by the time that the Arrow landed on the ground and touched its wheels, it had a 9-minute turnaround. So it would taxi, it would stop, shut down, and they would drop the cartridge down, and while it was refueling, they would load in a new cartridge of a new weapon systems that they're going to operate for the next mission set. So they were able to turn around this aircraft in 9 minutes and get it back up in the air to start operating yet again. Which, again, for the time, was extremely quick and way ahead of its time. So here comes the question, why am I talking about the Arrow so much? Why am I so fascinated with this aircraft, especially recently? Well, I've been lucky enough to receive a project from somebody who was working on a project for DCS, which was an Avro Arrow module. And I was trying to keep it hush-hush and try to keep it on the down low because I didn't want to drum up a bunch of hype and over-exceed expectations and anything like that. And I still don't, and I still want to try to keep it relatively hush-hush. And I mean, like, it's going to be so backwards in terms of the fact that I'm doing a video on the Avro Arrow and then now telling you that I'm trying to develop a module for the Avro Arrow in DCS. So how about we hop into Blender and I'll show you guys what we have currently. So here it is. It's the Avro Arrow. Obviously there's a lot of work still to be done. The main part of the aircraft is done, and we do have some animations for the landing gear and the cockpit opening. So that's all done. And let's just scroll in to the animations here. As you can see, the armatures for the cockpit are all working, and those are all animated quite well. If we scroll back here, we have the nozzles for the afterburners. Those are all modeled. I mean, it looks solid, but these are all separate pieces, as well as the fan blades for the Iroquois engine that would have been implemented in the Mark II version of the Arrow. As you can see, we do have the Sparrows modeled here, as well as some of the air brakes modeled and the animations for those modeled as well. And as you can see, like, it would come down as a cartridge. The weapons bay doors still need to be modeled and animated, and the cockpit still needs to be finished animated. So this is where I want to basically come out and say, I need help, because even though I have this project, I'm not familiar with 3D modeling or coding or anything in that matter. I'm a research guy. I love researching aircraft. I love talking about what these aircraft would be and the history of them. That's my thing. And I'm reaching out in a public forum to try to get help from people in the community to see if they're willing to jump on a project like this and to help bring it to life and allow the Arrow to be a part of a video game and be a part of this amazing game called DCS, and where you would see the full combat capabilities of what the Arrow could be doing. I do have the documents for the flight performance, the weapon systems. I've talked to multiple people who work in the Air Force and figuring out what the radar would have been, and we've landed on something similar to that of the F4 Phantom. Now, likely what would probably be the case when it comes to this aircraft as a mod or DCS is that we would probably use the F4 Phantom as a base, because of the fact that the radar would be so similar, some of the weapon systems would be extremely similar as well, and in terms of the overall handling and feel of the aircraft would be kind of similar, but obviously this would have more nose authority than the F4 Phantom, as well as obviously being slightly faster and having a higher operating altitude than the F4 Phantom. But I think using the F4 Phantom as the base would be the best, especially since ideally what I would like is having this be able to be played by 2 players with a Wizzo, and being able to use that gesture AI to being able to have this aircraft operate not only by 2 players, but also using the gesture AI so single players can also fully use this aircraft to its full capabilities. So if you're interested in joining this project of the Avro Arrow and trying to bring the Avro Arrow to DCS, link down in the description below. There's a Discord link. You can click on that. Just verify in the Discord and you're adhering to my Discord's rules. And if you have experience in 3D modeling and or programming experience with C++ or Lua, that would be great. Because I think this aircraft deserves the recognition it deserves. And it would be so nice to have the Arrow in DCS as a pure, true interceptor, because we don't really have that in DCS as like a true interceptor aircraft quite yet. And I think we can make this aircraft work. There's a lot of information. You could easily make an EFM out of this aircraft with all the information that we have. I have all the documents. I just have to basically organize all the documents into specific parts, because a lot of it's pretty messed up and mixed together, because again, that's just how archives work. So I would have to organize it into specific sections for what the modelers and the coders would need. That's my job. But if you're interested, just hit me up in the Discord and I'll give you the dev role, and then you can see everything for this aircraft and get the Blender file to help working on this aircraft. Anyways, I hope to see you around, and I hope to get some help with this and maintain this project and keep this project alive. Anyways, see you guys around.